I'd love to. Yes, it's still 30 days out before the official launch. But on my other show yesterday, 420 Post, which is focused on cannabis business, we announced that we're putting it together. That we actually been putting together a project for 6 months now that will benefit a charity of sorts that will benefit veterans. And the idea is that as provisioning centers and processors and growers and whatnot, as they sell product, a small portion from the wholesale price then gets dedicated to the Hero Project. And the Hero Project is a 501c3 formed here in Michigan. We have a board already of about 6 people on it. I'm one of those board members. And the idea would be that initially everybody wants to feed the veterans. That's fine. We would do that too. But we want to get beyond that into vocational training. What I was mentioning to the guys before we started was, for instance, they could teach them how to be hemp and or cannabis farmers, because the studies show that getting in around nature for people with PTSD from being in combat and all the things that does to your brain, that calms them down quite a bit. And of course, then they'd have access to CBDs and cannabis and whatnot. Where we launched with a group called the Michigan Veterans for Cannabis Network, and the man that runs that is a disabled combat veteran, and so he is already working with us to look at possible formulations that would be more veteran friendly, less THC, more CBDs and Delta 8s and things like that. And then Rob Robar from the Helping Friendly Hemp Company is our first processor that we're working with. And he came on the show and actually made news yesterday. He landed some big contracts. He's going to be in 1,000 distribution points around the nation for his products very shortly. And so he's expanding his operations in the Madison Heights area in Detroit. And I asked him if he's hiring, and he said very soon. So that's another opportunity there. And again, I asked him this morning, and I haven't heard back, if he needed to work with more hemp growers to get more basic products so that they can process it. And so I'm hopeful that will be the case as well. And if it is, then next week I'll tell you about how to reach out to Rob. So, we're trying to do our best to help the vets. And I have my outreach for all my various programs that I do. We reach about 40,000 people a month in the cannabis space and the hemp space. And so we're hoping to use that as a promotional tool to drive more business to the people we're working with, so the vets get more money. So exciting stuff. It's kind of my legacy project here as I get older. I want to leave something behind that helps a lot of people, and we're hopeful that the Hero Project will be just that.
Well, that sounds like a great project, Mike.
Well, we're working hard at it. It's just, I've never done nonprofit, so we had to bring in some specialists. I've always been a for-profit entrepreneur kind of guy, and so, and there's a lot of rules for nonprofits that I was not aware of. So luckily, we've got Connie Sparrow helping us with that. That's what she does. And we're working real closely with the Michigan Cannabis Association and some other groups. And again, we hope to have all the products on the shelves here by early May. We've got to get stickers done and all sorts of other stuff. It's as you know, these things take twice as long as what you think, right? And we've got a fair amount of our own money invested in it so far, but that's just part of the deal, right? So we got to do that. So my grandfather and father were in World War I or World War II, respectively, so my tribute to them.
Gentlemen, we're having some technical difficulties. I just noticed. I grabbed a tablet to look at the website, and for some reason, it is not broadcasting. So.
So I did all that for. Well, at least we're recording, right?
Yeah, we got it.
We're recording. So I am going to set it up again.
Now streaming. Okay.
Is it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think so, but
as it is.
It says live.
Webinar is now streaming live on custom live streaming service.
I'm watching the website.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now we're live. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. Okay. Another April Fool's joke. Here we go. It's just payback for me saying we're joining big tobacco and the hops industry. So
well, should we have Mike give it a little bit back? Should we have Mike redo? Give us his the Hero
Yeah,
Project.
give us a thumbnail again, Mike, on the Hero Project. I think it's important.
Sure. It's a new veterans charity that we formed. I'm working on it for about 6 months very quietly in the background. And we've got a board together. We've got our first processor together. We got our first veterans group that we're working with. The long and the short of it is we want to use sales of cannabis and hemp products to part of the wholesale price will be dedicated towards the charity. The money then will go to various veterans groups, and when we work with the provisioning centers themselves, they can pick whatever veterans group they want it to go to. We'll vet all the groups to make sure they're all up and up, and then we'll have a list together. But they may have their own ideas on who they want to support. It's totally up to them. Part of the money will then go, of course, to feed veterans, which is what everybody does. But other part of what we want to do is set up vocational training for veterans, get them off the streets. And one of our ideas is to train them to be hemp and or cannabis farmers because of getting around nature and letting that calm them down, because many of them suffer from PTSD from combat situations. If you've been in combat, it's not something they easily forget. And then maybe later on some housing for them. Again, to get them off the streets, give them training, get them self-sufficient. One of the things our veteran charity, Anton Harb from Michigan Veterans for Cannabis Network, said is all these veterans are used to having a mission in life. That's what the military does. And they get out of the military, they don't have a mission anymore, and they kind of fall apart. So not all of them, but many of them. And so we want to address that and help them, give them a mission again, and they will become our brand ambassadors, trying to expand this. We're working with Rob Robar from the Helping Friendly Hemp Company, who on my show yesterday just announced that they're going gangbusters. They've got some new distribution deals that'll put them in 1,000 different locations around the country here in the next couple of months. And so we're hoping to use that then is to really kick this off and generate a lot of income for our veterans charity. Exciting stuff. And as I said, this is sort of my tribute to my father and grandfather who were in the Army during World War I and II, respectively, and a way to give back to those who have already given our country so much.
Thanks much, Mike. Blaine Bechtel, do you have some news?
I got a little bit of news, but I'm going to save most of it for the end of the show. Mike, maybe next week we can talk a little bit about the big news that came out of New York this week. They finally made recreational and medical legal there in New York. So big news there for sure.
Well, and there's more and more states getting on there. And a lot of them that are more conservative are going medical first. Now, in Michigan, we're actually phasing out medical. In the next couple of months, it's all going to be adult use, and the medical card's going away. But we've been doing medical since, 2008, 2009, so we're one of the leaders in that area. And right now we're the second leading state for sales. We did tremendous sales last year, and they're predicting maybe $2 billion in sales this year, and then much more the next year. A lot of them are starting out at medical first, and then moving into adult use because there's still the old reefer madness issues out there. People are still a little averse to that, so it's an educational process.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Mike. So, first, the real important question I got, Mike, is what happened the other night?
Yeah, I had to have a couple of drinks after that game. I'm a U of M alumni, and they essentially choked. I even said that. I'm a big fan, but you can't make a shot for 5 minutes, So they lost their poise. That's what happens when you get in those pressure situations, right? If you can't handle the pressure, then you lose.
Everybody that's got a bracket still in any kind of contention can raise their hand, but that kind of took care of a lot of mine. Although I do have Gonzaga winning the whole thing, so
yeah, they look. I'm not a basketball player, but I've been watching it for a long time. They're pretty strong. I'd be surprised anybody beats them.
And of course, the other big news today is why wouldn't we want to play baseball today in 36-degree weather with snow flurries, right? That's just where it needs to be here. So, matter of fact, just after the show tonight is when this afternoon is when the first pitch gets thrown out, 1:10 today. So
yeah, I've been to a few home openers where you only last about 5 innings and you got to go to the bar because you can't feel your feet anymore. That's not exactly my idea of a good time. So
yeah.
So it's finally here, folks. Yep, it's finally here. Opening of baseball, whether we wanted it or not. It's April 1st, and away we go. There we go. Let's see, a couple quick things. Again, the Safe Banking Act, that's coming back up. So we want everybody to make sure that two things. One, that they've contacted their representatives regarding the Safe Banking Act, supporting that, and also about HR Bill 841, which will give us a regulatory pathway to bring CBD products into the marketplace safe and effective there. So let's see what else I got. And I think right now, I think that's about it. I'm gonna save the rest of it for the end of the show because we've got so much good stuff to do. We've got James DeDecker and Roger from FilmOrganic with us today. James is going to fill us in a little bit on a couple projects that you all might want to be interested in. So James, go ahead.
Thanks, Blaine. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity to talk with you today. I was an add-on guest, so I don't want to take all of Roger's time, certainly, but I want to let everybody know about a couple of programs that a collaboration of Midwestern hemp researchers have put together for this year. And those are the Midwestern Hemp Database and our new Cultivar Check program that is associated with the database. So the database was new last year. You may have participated or you may just be hearing about it. But the goal of the database, which is a collaboration between land-grant institutions in the Midwest, one nonprofit, and then a couple of private laboratories, is to provide some regional insight into the agronomic performance and cannabinoid development of hemp in our region. There's a number of partners that are on the project this year, including a few different universities, which include University of Wisconsin-Madison, Michigan State, Purdue, Kentucky, and Ohio State. I also mentioned nonprofit, which is Michael Fields Agricultural Institute in Wisconsin. And then our two laboratory partners this year, Rock River Laboratory and ACT Laboratories in Illinois. So what is the database? It's essentially a way to aggregate both researcher and grower data about hemp performance in our region, and then make that information publicly accessible so that growers can use it in decision making, and mostly decisions around cultivar selection, so what variety of hemp I'm going to grow, but other agronomic decisions as well, like plant spacing or different dates for different practices in the field. So that's kind of the basic concept, and any grower in the Midwest, in a set of states there that I mentioned with those universities, is welcome to participate by submitting data and submitting samples to the labs to be included in the database.
Okay. Thank you much, James. Appreciate that. So,
James, how's the best way for people to get a hold of you and sign up for those projects?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I would encourage people to just Google Midwestern Hemp Database, and the website will be the first link that comes up there. It's hosted through University of Illinois Extension, and the lead on the database is Phil Alberti at Illinois Extension. You can check out the database there. You can look at the data from last year. And then at the top of the homepage, there's a series of links there. And one of them is to fill out a survey to apply to participate. So you have to apply and be vetted to participate in the program. And the advantage, aside from the data that you get out of that, is you get access to reduced cannabinoid sampling. So our partner labs are offering $35 per sample cannabinoid testing for your crop. And that is the advantage that you really get as a grower participating, aside from the data that comes out the back end and being able to use that for your decision making. And then the Cultivar Check program is really just an enhancement of the database. So what we did is we took information that we generated through the database and through our research at these universities last year, and we identified a list of 10 what we're calling good potential cultivars for these Midwest states. So this is a list of 10 cultivars that met a set of criteria that we put together as researchers for the program about earliness, about CBD and THC concentrations, and about the number of samples. We need to have a minimum of 5 samples in the database with good data to be able to consider one of these varieties as a good potential variety. We've got 10 of those that we've identified from last year. And the Cultivar Check program is an opportunity to grow 5 of those good potential varieties on your farm and collect some more in-depth information about them. So we will be sending seeds, we will be sending packing materials, we'll be sending labels, pretty much everything that people need to successfully grow out these 5 high potential varieties. and then submit that information on how they do on your farm, including flower samples to the labs for populating the database further. So it's really kind of the next level of involvement for the database, rather than just submitting samples from whatever cultivar you happen to be growing on your farm. We're asking you to grow these 5 specific cultivars from the good potential list.
Is there a cost, James, to anybody?
No, there's no cost. In fact, well, let me rephrase that. So for the database itself, as just any grower that is interested in participating in the database, the cost is the $35 per sample, and we're asking growers to submit at least 2 samples from a particular field or particular cultivar to the database. So basically, you're in it for $70 for the database itself. For the Cultivar Check program, we have grant support through SARE, which is the USDA Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Initiative. We have a partnership grant through SARE this year that is funding all of the Cultivar Check program costs. So those participants are asked to do a little bit more. There's more work involved, but they don't have the cost associated with participation. Everything is covered by the grant for that Cultivar Check.
And about how many plants or how much acres are you looking to have that grown on that?
Yeah, for the Cultivar Check program, we're only asking people to grow 5 plants of a particular cultivar and collect data from all 5 of those. So we really have tried with the Cultivar Check program to make it as grower friendly as possible. So we don't want commercial growers to be discouraged by the amount of data or amount of plants they have to grow for this program. Now, that said, we are supplementing the Check program data with our replicated and controlled research conducted at each of these universities. We're also growing those cultivars. So it's a way to kind of leverage grower experience and pair that with more controlled data coming out of our research facilities, and then kind of see how things line up. This is a strategy that we've been employing in other crops for on-farm research for a number of years and developing in those other cropping systems.
All right, well, we'll just have information out, but James, maybe you want to give one more time how they can contact you or get into the program.
Absolutely. So I would encourage people to Google the Midwestern Hemp Database. And again, that's the University of Illinois Extension website there. And there is links at the top that you can look at the report from last year. You can apply to participate this year and get some of the background information, the details of what's required in terms of the data that's needed to be collected and so forth. If you need to contact me, again, my name is James DeDecker. I'm with Michigan State University at the Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center, and you can reach me at DEDECKE5@msu.edu. So that's DeDecker, drop the R and put a 5 in its place at msu.edu. I'd love to talk with anybody with questions about the database, and we'd love to see great Michigan participation numbers this year in both the database and the Cultivar Check program.
I'll make sure we get that link and your email address in the chat on the website.
Awesome. Can I drop it in the chat here?
Well, it won't get to anyone here.
Oh,
so
okay.
I have to do it on the website. So if you go to iHemp Michigan, iHemp Hour, there's a chat there. You can actually communicate with people if you could do that on the webpage.
Nice. All right.
One last question for James. Is there a deadline for people to get into this?
So the deadlines are actually fairly late for the database program. So right now we're talking about probably up till July that we would accept perhaps people into the database. But the Cultivar Check program, because we have to distribute planting material, we're distributing the seeds and everything else, that's going to be sooner. I think we're looking at end of April for that. So as soon as you think you might be interested, I'd encourage you to start the process because you do have to apply and be vetted to be accepted. And so go ahead and fill out that survey. If you have any interest at all, fill out the survey, and then you could always opt out.
All right. Thanks, James.
Yeah, good to see you guys, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
How's the new baby?
Oh, George is good. He's just about 6 months, and so we're making the change from just breastfeeding onto food. So I'm really enjoying that. Now it's like now I get to participate in everything because he's been just breastfed. So it's been very fun to try to feed him. And he's a great kid.
Well, Well, we're
What's
glad
that?
everybody's doing well up there. Then that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you,
Thanks for asking.
are you able to get any sleep?
Yeah, unfortunately for my wife, I'm a really heavy sleeper and she's a very light sleeper. So she usually is the one that pops up first. So I feel a little bit bad about that. I'm trying to carry my weight in other ways to
There you
compensate.
go. All
Yeah.
right, cool.
So there's one other, thanks, James, very much, and we'll make sure we promote this as much as we can and get that out there. So with that.
Thanks
So
a lot, guys.
Dave, do you want to do your thing? Or you
Yeah,
want
let's talk about our sponsors. I just want to mention again, thanks to Camel Cigarettes and Coors Light for sponsoring iHemp Colorado. I'm broadcasting live from Colorado Springs, Colorado. We've decided hemping is hard, and we're going to go with where the money is. So
Ain't that the truth?
I could say sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but we're just going to do beer and tobacco because.
You
But
just
anyhow, seriously,
behind this, Dave, and you'd have everything covered. We just got to get a band sponsor, So
so happy April Fools, everybody. I just had to do that as fun.
Ah, okay.
And I'm struggling with banking with the new hemp venture. It's just, I'm looking forward to the day when we don't have to deal with this. But we do have some great sponsors, Blaine. Before you introduce our guest, I want to talk about, well, of course, FilmOrganic is one of our sponsors. Thank you very much. But I also want to mention Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply. Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply has a large greenhouse operation in Midland, Michigan, where we're going to be hosting an Earth Day event on April 22nd. Look for an email about that. We're going to have a live event. We're going to be able to meet and greet and see in person in a safe and equitable way. So look for that announcement. And we also have another event, a virtual event on April 10th in the evening. That's a Saturday. We're going to do a networking event. We had so much fun with the Hempies that we're going to do a similar type event, share out and collaborate and network and maybe have a cocktail or three. So look for those emails. Those are coming up soon. And also, finally, our last sponsor is iHemp Manufacturing. iHemp Manufacturing is going into production with hemp frisbees next week. So this is happening really fast. We have a compounded hemp virgin polypropylene blend. We have the molds in place, and we are doing private label projects. We're starting out our first, and I say we because I'm one of myself.
No,
and
I was
Tony
waiting for
Spano.
that disclaimer, So
Yeah, so this is my venture to be sustainable in the hemp industry, because we're going to have some major announcements to make about iHemp Michigan, because we're really not going away, and we're just getting smarter every year, right? That's always been our goal, Blaine.
That's absolutely. I keep saying that every year we're going to be smarter.
We have some really exciting news that we're going to be rolling out in the next week. As soon as I get back from Colorado, I'll be off this 14-inch screen and back to command headquarters. I can get a lot more done. But thanks again to our sponsors. And Blaine, why don't you introduce our number one sponsor here, FilmOrganic, Rogers.
All right, I'm going to introduce Roger in just 1 minute, but there was a very important piece of news that I didn't mention. I want to do this because this may be of interest. And Roger, we're going to take all the time we need for you, even though we've had a little delay getting to you. We're going to take all the time we need today. So, but Andrew Simmons he's been farming in the Flint area where they've grown hemp since the Michigan pilot program started. They also have a processing facility on site to make oil, distillate, isolate, etc. And why we're mentioning this is that because he's looking to partner with an entity who wants to get an established business with established SOPs. He's open to offers, and he would consider selling outright, leasing, or sell back with lease back, or strategic partnership. And so Andrew Simmons, and his number is 313-673-9861. And we'll have the information up on the site as well. But so if anybody's looking to get into it or establish and they want to be maybe expand, but what a great opportunity to talk to Andrew and see what you can work out there. So with that, but without further delay, now we're going to get to Roger. Roger with FilmOrganic. Saw Roger's post about this new, they call it mulch in the business. And I thought, boy, this is really an interesting topic and very timely for what's coming up here in the near future with everybody planting. And I know the trials and tribulations I went through that first year using mulch. And so I thought Roger had a great topic here, and again, timely very much. So Roger, maybe you can give a little more on your background if you'd like, and let's get you started here.
Sure. Thank you, Blaine. Let me share my screen here. Yeah, where's my screen? Here it is. So thank you for, where am I going to get this?
Might bump up your volume just a touch, Roger.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, lean in a little there.
All right, there we go. Okay, well, thank you for having me here. It's really exciting to be able to talk with y'all from Michigan. We're familiar with some Michigan growers, mostly in vegetable production, and thought of sharing our thoughts on how to avoid the toughest weeds, including nutsedge, without the use of chemicals, of course, and that's the challenge. When we're talking about weeds, we're talking about essentially three types of weeds. Broadleaves. You've got some names over here, but the issue with broadleaf weeds, or some of them, is bindweed and chickweed will essentially grow on the plant and squeeze them and choke them. And you've got other weeds like pigweed and lamb's quarter, which can end up outgrowing the plant actually, and causing a lot of shade and causing therefore the plant not to grow as well. A second category of weeds are grasses. Crabgrass and quackgrass are two examples. They grow outwards and just spread out. And what you can see here on the left is quackgrass growing in straw. So we'll talk about straw a little bit later on. Some watch outs with that. And the nastiest weed of all are sedges. Here's an example of yellow nutsedge. There are others. These are sharp leaves that will grow through just about anything. They're very strong, very rigid, very sturdy plants. I understand that the Egyptians were making papyrus or paper out of nutsedge, is what I was able to read on it. So these are rhizomes. So they're plants that a tractor will draw from or take from one part of the field and transport it to another part of the field when you're prepping your ground. And so you can infestate your field quite easily. And they strive particularly well when all the other weeds are being managed and nutsedge is not being managed. It will take over. It's a dominant weed, so it can cause some real problems. And the effect of that is a dramatic decrease in yield. And so we'll talk about 6 strategies of how to avoid or how to deal with all of that. Some of these are things you probably know, and hopefully you'll learn a few things as well. We don't often think about having a raised bed as being a strategy to control weeds, but in fact it does. So what do we mean by a raised bed? We mean taking soil from one part of the field to a different part of the field and raising the bed up generally by about 6 inches. It can be as low as 4 inches or as tall really as you'd like, maybe 10 or even 12 inches. Having a very light and fluffy growing medium for plants to take better. And that's one of the benefits of the raised bed. And that is that because the soil is not as compacted or not compacted at all, the root system will develop faster, and the root system for your plants will develop faster than the root system for weeds that are growing next to the raised bed in the trough. So that's one important advantage for having a raised bed. There are others. Because they're higher up, they're elevated, they simply get a head start, 5 to 6 inch head start on weeds. And the soil is going to be either better drained or will retain water better. So you'll be able to manage your water a little bit better and again, provide a better growing medium for your plant. If it's in a heavy ground, a light and fluffy ground will allow you to have better drainage. And if you're on light soil, the water will have a tendency to, you'll get a bit more retention instead of having it see through all the way down. Of course, there are some drawbacks to having a raised bed. You're going to increase your soil temperature just because you've got more surface area for the sun to shine on. That can lead to problems, although I have to say in Michigan, it's probably not so much of an issue. Places like Florida, with crops like hemp, which are heat sensitive, you'll want to not have such a high raise, but in Michigan, that wouldn't be an issue. The bigger issue, though, is that what sometimes happens is growers are so excited about getting a light and fluffy ground that they plow too deep, and they bring up seeds that would otherwise not germinate because they're, say, 12 or 18 inches deep, and they bring them to the top of the surface, and then weeds start growing because of these dormant seeds. We generally recommend to have a bed which is twice, to loosen the soil about twice the height of your bed. So that means if you've got a 5 to 6 inch bed, you'll want to have about 10 to 12 inches of loose, fluffy ground to work with. If you've got a sandy ground, you can get around or get away with a lot less. In fact, you might not even have to prepare your soil if you're on real sand, pure sand. But otherwise, we recommend about twice the depth, but not more, in order to avoid bringing up seeds from underneath. The other issue with a raised bed is that you need to make sure that the bed is full. Otherwise, you'll have irregular irrigation, and that leads to all sorts of problems, uneven growth, plants drying out if it's that bad, and even weeds, because irregular beds or poorly shaped beds, what can happen with that is the weed barrier, which is what we are going to eventually talk about, the weed barrier can start to get some holes, some pokes in it. Regular plastic will do that. A certified biodegradable mulch film like ours will do that. And so every time you've got a hole that's poked in your film, a weed can grow through that. So you need to make sure and have a properly full bed. Okay, here's an implement that is typically used. This is a company out of Ohio called Buckeye Tractor, which I like very much. They're not so known. This here unit will shape a bed. You can see there's a pan in the middle of the picture. You've got two center discs in the front. On the right-hand side, you've got two center discs which are filling the center of the bed. Then you've got a place where your roller will sit. It looks like there's a plastic roll that is in the middle. And then you've got your press wheels, which will pull the film down and draw it towards the soil, and also your additional disc, which will fill the soil, fill or backfill, throw some dirt back on the edges to pin the film down. And then you've got tires at the end to keep the unit straight. The reason I like this unit is because there's a lot of room, there's a lot of space. You don't have so many things going on at once. Sometimes you get these very compact units which have a different advantage. When you're turning from one row to the next row, you're taking less space, so it's easier to turn. This unit is a little bit longer, so it is a little bit more complex to turn. But the advantage of having that extra room means that your bed is going to be better shaped, your soil is going to flow better, you're going to lay the mulch film better because you've got room. And what you can't really see there is that you've got a roller, all your rollers, the moving parts are out of plastic. A lot of other manufacturers have them out of steel. Soil sticks to steel. When soil sticks to steel, eventually what can happen is the rollers stop turning. When they stop turning, you can get other problems that are caused down the road. The other thing to notice about this unit is it's not welded, it's bolted. So you've got other manufacturers which will provide a welded machine, which is going to be, you know, a better choice if you're working with you know, a high acreage, 100 acres. I wouldn't want to work with a bolted machine. This unit can have an additional attachment, which is for the drip tape. It's not shown here. It's commonly used, a drip tape attachment, either single row drip or twin row drip, which is a simple attachment. So that's what a bed shaper, drip layer, and mulch film layer will look like. All right, the second strategy is to use drip tape. Drip tape as a method of irrigation instead of using overhead irrigation or flood irrigation. Although both overhead and flood irrigation will work with mulch film, the use of drip tape has the additional advantage of watering the plants that you want to water when you want to water them, instead of watering the weeds that you've got. And that's a huge advantage as compared to other methods of irrigation. You're also going to consume about 25% less water with drip tape than you would without drip tape if you were flood or overhead irrigating. By the way, the use of mulch film will also save another 25% water. So the combination of drip tape and mulch film will save about 50% water. We always recommend to place the drip tape a little bit below the surface of the film or the surface of the bed. I oftentimes see the drip tape riding or sitting on top of the bed. That is not a good idea. It's certainly easier to lay when it's sitting on top, but the issue you get into is water will run off the top of the bed and onto the edges, and you'll end up watering the bed in a different area that you're intending to water it, getting water where you want the water to get to. And so it's always important to place it about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below the surface so that it spreads out evenly. Okay, the third strategy to block weeds or to manage weeds is to use mulch film. Some people call it plastic. This is a physical weed barrier, and it's really the best way to block weeds that are on the bed. Now, there is a part of that material, the film, which doesn't protect the soil, and that's at the collar where the plant is, where you're planting. So the hole where you're planting your plant. And weeds can grow around that collar, especially early in the year when you've got a transplant or a plug that you're placing in the hole. So our recommendation there is to actually lay your mulch film early. That way, weeds will germinate. They'll hit the, generally speaking, at least in Michigan, black part of the film, and they'll burn. And you will have essentially solarized the collar, and you're going to reduce your weed pressure right around the plant. And that's, oftentimes I see growers want to lay and plant right away. There are benefits to that, but in terms of weed control, it's actually not a good practice. Okay, there are three broad types of mulch film, of physical weed barrier. There's plastic that you throw away. There's a degradable plastic, sometimes incorrectly called biodegradable plastic. And then you've got a third category, which is what we make, which is a certified biodegradable material with a predictable lifespan. There are other qualities with unpredictable lifespans. So let's go through each one of these. So regular plastic, I think you know what this is. It's polyethylene plastic, the same kind that is used to make trash bags or carry-out sacks. You lay it with the implement that we showed. When you're done after harvest, you pull it, you yank it, you have to slice it to get the drip tape out, and then you pull it and you throw it away and you send it to the landfill. And so you're paying upfront for the material, then you're paying at the end because you're going to be paying for labor, you're going to spend some tractor time, and the disposal as well is going to come into the equation. So when you take all of that into account, you'll see that it can be rather an inexpensive proposition. Oftentimes I hear the comment, well, it's so much cheaper. Well, it is true. It is the least expensive of the three to purchase upfront in terms of the price per roll or price per linear foot, but it's certainly expensive when you get to the end of the story. The second category of mulch film is called degradable mulch film. What this is regular plastic, the same as the first type I just spoke about, but you're adding or sticking in an additive to help it break up. There are three types of additives. There's a photosensitive additive. In other words, it reacts with sunlight. There's an oxygen-sensitive additive. In other words, it reacts with oxygen. And there's an enzyme, what's so-called enzyme activated, which means it attracts enzymes towards the surface. These are additives. You stick in 1 or 2% of foo-foo dust in plastic, and you hope that it breaks up in a period of time that you can work with. It does not break down the material, though, because polyethylene, it has a great lifespan. Its lifespan is 200 to 300 years, and putting in 1% of a magic additive is not going to shrink that 200 years down to 6 months or a year at all. It will certainly help it to break up into pieces, and sometimes or oftentimes we hear growers say, oh yeah, I tried a biodegradable years ago, I still have it in my field. Well, it wasn't biodegradable, it was a degradable, and yes, they still have it in their field because it doesn't break up. What's the difference between breaking up and breaking down? I usually take the example of a porcelain mug like this. And if I take all my might and throw it on the ground, the mug will break up into pieces, but it's still porcelain. It hasn't changed the chemical structure. It's changed the physical form, but it hasn't changed its composition. Whereas the certified biodegradable mulch films are not made of plastic. Sometimes you hear things like they're starch-based, or in our case, they're tapioca-based. They're made from materials that are inherently biodegradable. And the way they biodegrade is they first absorb water, and then the microorganisms that are commonly found in the soil can eat them up and transform into compost and leave behind compost, about 80 pounds of compost per acre. So there's a biological transformation of the weed barrier from what it is originally to some kind of a compost, a very clean compost actually, that's left behind. So what's important then is to make sure that you've got a predictable lifespan that is not breaking up or breaking down too soon, or not taking too long to break down. And the common question we always get is, how long does it last and how long does it take to break down? And so we've engineered now, since 2014, FILMORGANIC was founded, and I'm one of the co-founders. And we've engineered the films to have predictable lifespans anywhere between 2 to 3 months, all the way to 15 or 18 months, depending on the quality that you're looking for. Here is what we're talking about in terms of. This is a field in Colorado. That's another field in Colorado. It's a product called Smart Stripes, which we'll talk about in a second in terms of the color pattern. So because it's certified, it means it's clean for your soil. And earlier I was talking about the difference between plastic with an additive versus a certified biodegradable material. And right here, you've got a picture on the top of a field that was freshly disked with a degradable film. You can see that the plastic is in pretty big pieces. On the bottom is a field that was freshly disked with FILMORGANIC, and you can hardly tell there was anything there. Okay, depending on the color, you'll be able to help increase yield. We'll talk about that in a second. The transplanting window is important because If the transplanting window is the time between the moment you lay your weed barrier and the time that you plant on the weed barrier. That's what we call the transplanting window. That becomes really important in a biodegradable mulch film, because if you wanted to have, say, a 5 or 6 month longevity and you're taking up 30 days on the front end because you want to lay your mulch film early to let the weeds germinate and sterilize the collar, then you need to make sure and have a lifespan that will cover the full amount of time, not just the growing cycle, but also that amount of time before the growing cycle that you'll want to have to lay your mulch film early. That's me stepping on it after about 3-4 months it was laid. Okay, how do you clean the drip tape? Well, you kind of didn't see that, but you can basically rip it through the film or pull it from the edge as we saw earlier. What do you do after? You disc it in the soil and you're done. A field. This here is a field in Kentucky. So that tells you a little bit more. Whoops. Okay, now let's talk about the economics. Two types of economics. First of all, the economics of mulch film, regardless of the type of material you're using. And then we'll look at the economics of the specific type of mulch film, whether it's plastic or certified biodegradable like ours. Mulch film is popular because it makes so much sense. The return on investment is huge. It will cost about $500 an acre of material cost plus cleanup cost to protect that field. On the other hand, you're going to be saving anywhere between $2,000 and $4,000 in weed per acre in weeding cost. That will depend on how clean your field is, how clean your soil is or not. If you've got a field that is fresh, new, it'll be more expensive. You'll have more dormant seeds. If you've got an older field that you've been manicuring and taking care of for years, the cost will be lower. So the return on investment is huge, and so it makes a lot of sense to use mulch film instead of going bare ground. Now, in terms of the type of mulch film, the economics on that are also worthwhile mentioning. I just used here a 5-foot spacing per acre with about a 10% net loss per acre, taking into account a row every 10 a passway, sorry, every 10 rows. So that comes out to about 8,000 net linear feet per acre. 1 mil black plastic, 48-inch, will sell for approximately $120 a roll. You'll need 2 rolls to the acre because that roll was a 4,000 foot long roll. You'll need 2 rolls to the acre, about $240 for the plastic. Then you're going to come back at the end of the year, you're going to clean up your field, and you'll spend about 5 to 7 hours on your labor. You'll spend 2 or maybe even 3 hours on your tractor time, depending on the type of soil you're working with and the conditions you're in, if it's moist or dry. And then you'll throw out your plastic, and that's going to cost you as well. If you look at the total cost, and we've surveyed probably over 200 growers in the nation, the number of $250 an acre in a place like Michigan makes a lot of sense. Parts of the country are much more expensive, Rhode Island being one of them. There are no landfills, so that disposal cost is not $50, but it's more like $150. And so the number that most growers calculate and come up with is about $250 per acre. So that brings up a total cost of about $490, call it $500 per acre. Now, with Film Organic, one of our products called Black 36, it's got a 3-month lifespan. It sells for $199 a roll. So 2 rolls of it is $398. Your cleanup cost to remove the drip tape, that's 1 person, 1 acre per hour, $15. But it can be less than that. And so the total cost per acre is $413. So you're actually saving money. Not only are you saving time, but you're also saving money, and you're avoiding throwing something in your landfill. So what's that worth, saving time? You know, that's tough to quantify, but I would say that if we all didn't want to save time, none of us would probably have a dishwasher at home to help us clean our dishes, because we would avoid the spend of the hot water and the unit to begin with, and so on. I talk a lot about certifications, and what do the certifications mean? Well, there are 3 certifications you need to pay attention to. The first one is it certified biodegradable? In other words, will it biodegrade in a certain amount of time, a reasonable period of time? And that time is, generally speaking, one year in terms of the certification. So is it certified to biodegrade, to be made out of materials that are inherently biodegradable? Or is this additive technology that you hope will degrade and break up after a long period of time? The second certification is the seedling certification, and it's just as important. It's the one that you see there with the 2 leaves, black and white design with the 2 leaves. And the reason that seedling certification is important is because it tells you 2 things. First of all, it tells you that the germination rate of future crops is 100%. In other words, you make compost with the film. You blend that compost with soil, 1-to-1 mixture, and you throw seeds in it, and you watch the seeds grow and compare it to pure soil. And that certification means that you will have a 100% germination rate for your future crop, which is obviously very important. You don't want to be damaging your soil because you're disking something into it. And the third element is the heavy metal free. Now, the seedling certification has those 2 requirements. To get the seedling certification, you need to have a high 100% germination rate, and it needs to be heavy metal free. So, and that's especially important for hemp and cannabis growers for reasons that we all know. There are different colors that are offered, and color matters. The color will change the heat units that are being generated or being that the plant will receive. Oftentimes, I hear growers say, anywhere. I use black. Why? Because they see their neighbor who's producing vegetables using black mulch film, who happens to be growing cucumbers, a heat-loving plant, and that's what their local dealer carries black, and everybody seems to be buying black, so I just buy black mulch film. And black mulch film is a very good product for certain plants. It's not always the best color for your plants, and we'll go through that in a second. But basically, we offer 4 different colors: black, white on black, the smart stripes, which is on the left. It's got a center stripe of black down the middle, 12 inches wide, and the edges are white. And then the reflective film. Well, let's take a look at how color affects yield. And we'll see 2 studies. The first is strawberries, and the second is hemp. And strawberries is a heat-sensitive plant. It does not like to overheat, just like hemp. And what we did is at Kansas State University last summer, we tested 4 different colors: the black, the cool white, the smart stripes, and the reflective, the 4 colors you just saw. And we measured marketable yield and caliber improvement. Caliber means size. And if you compare the colors to the black, what you see is in every category, every case, the size of the fruit is larger by anywhere between 14 and 18%. That means a 14 and 18% a strawberry that is 14 or 18% larger just because of the color. Nothing else has changed. So color has a huge impact. Looking at hemp, we conducted an experiment at Colorado State University in 2019 in Yellow Jacket, which is in the southwest part of the state. And it's at about 5,500 feet in altitude, and a climate, a heat unit, in terms of heat units, it resembles greatly Michigan. And we compared black, white, smart stripes in this case. And what we noticed was that with both flower yield and dry biomass, we were getting approximately 10% more flowers and 10% more dry biomass with smart stripes than with black and with white. And so the question is, why? And here's the reason, or the hypothesis. The hypothesis is that, or what we observed was, after about 7 weeks, we measured the diameter of the main stalk. And after 7 weeks, the stalk on the white mulch film was the largest, 1.5 inch in diameter. Smart stripes came in second, 1.25 inch diameter. And the black mulch film was third by a lot. It was only a 3/4 inch diameter stalk. That was after 7 weeks, so well into the vegetation stage. When we got into the flowering stage, we saw that the plants on the smart stripes kept growing and producing, whereas on the white, they stopped growing and the plants were the smallest. And on black, the plants continued growing to a certain extent. So what's going on? Early in the season, when it's 80 degrees outside, black plastic gets to about 120 degrees. There's always an air gap in between the plastic and the soil. And that air, that hot air, will only escape through the collar. So the plant, the transplant, which is small, is getting a lot of heat stress because it's seeing 120 degree air being pushed up from underneath. On the other hand, with white mulch film, you're taking that temperature down from 120 to about 100 degrees. That makes a big difference. So you don't have as much hot air being forced up through the collar, which explains why the plants did better through the vegetation stage on the white mulch film instead of the black. And the stripes was in between the two, closer to the white. Later on in the year, when you're in the flowering stage, the plant is large, and so it's creating its own shade. Plus, you've got white plastic, which is cold, and the roots are very deep. They're now at 1 foot or 2 feet deep. And as we know, hemp roots and cannabis roots like to be at about 80, 82 degrees. So the combination of the shading, the white plastic, and the deep roots means that there aren't very many heat units going back to those roots. The benefit of the striping is that you're getting some heat units back towards the soil, back towards the root zone, which explains why the plants actually outperformed with that color pattern. Okay, so now we talked about the bed. What do we do in between the bed? So there are some strategies there. First strategy is to set yourself a weed threshold. Don't expect necessarily to have a perfectly clean have it perfectly clean in between your rows. It's okay to have a few weeds. In fact, you might even want to sow a cover crop if you've got a flat ground and you've got some clay in your soil, which will keep humidity. You might want to sow a cover crop that you will mow throughout the year if it gets too tall. The benefit of that is you'll have cleaner rows. When you walk through and cull, it'll be easier to walk through because you're going to have a bit of biomass to step on, and that's actually a really good strategy. If you've got a lot of land, space out your rows. Don't go with a 5-foot spacing. Try 8 feet so you can get your tractor in and cultivate. Or if you've got very light ground, you could strip till, meaning you don't prep your soil at all, and you just lay your mulch film, you shape your bed, lay your drip tape and mulch film all at once, and you keep your cover crop in between your rows. All right, we talked about the different types of weeds up front. Let's talk about nutsedge because it will grow through mulch film regardless of the type. In fact, some people joke around and say grows through concrete. So the technique that some organic growers use is that they will lay 2 rolls at the same time. A first roll of flooring underlayment, craft paper if you wish. We recommend 40-pound craft paper. You can buy it at Uline. Home Depot used to carry it. I don't know if they still do. And you can get it in different widths. And so there's usually 2 stations where you can unwind your film from. The station that is nearest the tractor, you would lay or unwind the underlayment, and the station that is away from the tractor, you would use the film organic. And what happens is, after a few weeks, the nutsedge grows. It gets smothered because it won't go through the 40-pound craft paper, and then the craft paper is paper, so it rots in about 6 to 8 weeks, 6 weeks. By then, the nutsedge has been controlled, and you've got your weed barrier that will continue to do the job for the rest of the year. And again, nutsedge goes through regular plastic and can take over a bed. You don't need to do this in your entire field, but in areas that you know are problematic, go ahead and get this craft paper. It will do wonders for you. You'll be very happy with it. Some very large organic growers use this. When I mean very large, I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of acres. And of course, when you're done, all you need to do is disc the film in the field. That's in terms of weed control strategies. Just thought I'd talk a little bit about what do you do next. Well, you can transplant manually. Literally poke a hole, drop a seed. And there are some very large farms, cucumber producers, squash producers that swear this is the best way to sow their field. Direct sow or or apply the transplant. The more common method is a water wheel. Can you see that?
Here we are today planting courgettes. We used to plant them by hand with trowels on our knees, and now we've invested. Person driving doesn't take a big tractor to pull it, and they
There we
just go
go.
along.
Here's a water wheel. Pokes a hole. You've got somebody next sitting in a chair and just dropping a plug.
They all start off pretty fast, but soon start slowing down.
We're not seeing the water wheel. We'll have to
And also
reshare
gets water straight into the hole at the time of planting.
the transplanting screen.
Or you can go fully automatic. This is a machine out of Italy.
Roger,
Yeah.
we're not seeing the videos you're sharing.
Okay.
You'll
One
just
moment.
stop sharing this screen and maybe share
Yeah.
your home screen
Yeah.
with that video. Thank you.
So I'm going to do. Here we go.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a fully automatic unit. What it will do is it will shape a bed, lay the drip, lay the mulch film, poke a hole, and drop a transplant, all in one. Can you see that?
Yes, sir. Yep. Oh, cool.
Obviously, you're driving slowly, but you're doing a lot at the same time.
Yeah, that was some close spacing.
Oops, I need to stop this here. And that was pretty much it. I had one more, but oh, I do want to show you one more thing about direct seeding. I get asked this question sometimes. And I will tell you a little bit of direct seeding. I want to show you a picture. Why is that not working? Can you see that?
I see your link. Yep.
Oh, but you don't see the direct seeding picture.
No.
Okay. Well, there's something called a drum punch planter. The drum punch planter, specialty sales out of Georgia makes it, and it's a really effective unit for direct seeding. It will poke a very small hole and a drop of seed. What's interesting about it is that your plant density can be as low as 4-foot spacing and as high as twin row 8-inch spacing. So you can get to 25,000 plants with a horticulture style per acre, which is uncommon. So
Excellent.
Wow.
that's what we've got for today.
Good information. I really like your explanation of the difference between a degradable and a biodegradable plastic. That's important to know because, you know, I know Blaine had some experience with that plastic and the disposal cost. You want to touch on that, Blaine?
You know, I will, and I've got a lot of questions, but we're going to keep going on this because it's a good topic. But I just want, in case people got to go, I want to make sure they know where to get in touch or how to get a hold of this product if they want to. So Roger, what's the best way for people to be able to find your product and be able to purchase it?
You can visit our website, filmorganic.com, FILMORGANIC.com, and or write me an email, rtambay, T as in Tennessee, A-M as in Memphis, B as in boy, A-Y, at filmorganic.com, and I'll be happy to serve.
Okay, and we'll make sure we get some of that information out too on that. So my first statement is, where were you 2 years ago? Why didn't I find you then? I would have saved a lot of heartache and a lot of headache on that for sure on that. So.
And let me ask you, you said your medium is tapioca? Is that right? Did I understand that?
It's tapioca root, which is one of the ingredients that we use. Yeah. It's a fermented tapioca root. Yeah.
No, if it's fermented, then Dave would be interested.
Caught my ear right away.
Yeah, you caught. He looked right up when you said fermented. So
hopefully, as you experiment more and more,
Liquid.
maybe you can find that hemp will maybe be a good product to put into your plastic there. If you need to know more about that, let me know. We've got a way to make some very, very fine powder out of it. So we'll do that.
Okay.
So I'll give you a little bit of my experience. First of all, as you mentioned before, there's a cost involved up front when you buy the product and lay it and do that, and there's a cost to take it out of the field. And so just a little example I have is I did 20 acres, and we had to remove the plastic and the drip tape because the farmer did not want it staying on the farm. And it cost me almost $1,000 just to rent the dumpster to be able to take that plastic to the landfill. And of course, I'm putting it in a landfill where we know now, of course, I knew then too, it's never going to degrade, right? It's always going to be in that landfill. But then we also did some, and I'm going to call it the degradable one, not the compostable one. And we did that. And that, of course, by the end of the season, it was pretty well gone. It was easy to pull the drip tape up, but of course, we couldn't pull the plastic up because it would come in just in pieces. Did that. Did find on the white plastic that we did, because we did some of that mulch as well. Again, as you were mentioning, there great vegetative growth during that. I can't really give a real example on the end of it because we didn't harvest most of that field, but I certainly saw a remarkable distance on that. And now I know why I always called my field the Jurassic Park of weeds when we were growing it that year, because the nutsedge just came right up through that. I mean, we tried mowing in between the rows and a lot of stuff. And so learned a lot. You either go to college and you pay a lot for education, or you do the actual and you learn a lot that way. So either way, you're going to pay for it, right? Just one way or the other. So a lot of knowledge from that, but certainly wish that I would have known about this material. I would have certainly tried that for sure on that. So, and we used the water when we did it. We did transplants. We did in ours. So it's nice to know though that there is a way to do this direct seed as well for some people that want to do that. So
that very sophisticated attraction that you showed that does it all. That's got to cost a few bucks, right?
Oh yeah, several tens of thousands of dollars.
Now, interesting, we have a couple of people on the iHempMichigan.com website under the classified section. We have a couple of farmers there that do a list that they go around and do shape the beds and make all that stuff and lay the plastic and everything. So if anybody's looking at that or looking for that kind of service, we have that listed on the website. So there are some people that do that for sure on that. So
Let me just say one thing here. The unit the machine that will do everything all at once, shape the bed, lay the drip, the plastic plant, etc. They're very expensive units. If you've got very consistent soil on very flat ground, yeah, it's worthwhile considering. Otherwise, it's always good to take your time and do things one step at a time. Start by shaping your bed and laying your mulch, and then go back in later, including weed management around the collar. But I just wanted to show that it was something that's possible.
So when you're shaping your bed, is that when you put in the drip irrigation system at that point, and then you put the whatever the medium is over top of that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That all happens at once with most machines, because you can't go back in and put the plastic or the drip tape after you put the irrigation, after you put the plastic on. You can lay it on top like you've shown there, but then that doesn't do a lot with that either. So, yeah. All right, Dave, I don't know if there's any questions that came up from the website or not, or we have anything?
No, sir. Well, I think it's time for the hemper.
All right, well, we can do that. Well, Roger, last pitch, anything you'd like to throw in on this? Again, great information. Again, I wish I would have seen this 2 years ago, but we're all getting smarter, so I'm getting smarter, that's for sure. So any last things you'd like to add, Roger?
I just want to appreciate your time and everybody's time for putting up with me.
All right, well, Roger.
What part of Canada are you from, Roger?
Montreal, where it's not snowing, but it was this morning.
Canadian accent. I was just curious.
You heard it, huh?
Yeah.
Go Habs.
There you go.
Yeah, Dave used to skate with Gordie Howe, so maybe it wasn't Gordie Howe, but no, Dave's a hockey player.
All right, well, yeah, we're going a little long, so I'm going to try to make sure as I can here. One announcement I do want to make, I don't know if we made it or not, we are officially now advocacy members of the Hemp Roundtable. We're very excited to be able to partnership with them and to be able to help champion that cause that they're doing. All the legislation that needs to be done and has been done to bring us to this point where we are now, and going forward, as we're going to need to still tweak things in the hemp world for sure. So we're really we're grateful and we're thankful that we can partner with them and be part of that situation. So, all right, last chance. Anybody got anything good for the cause? All right.
Shout out to Morris and Lizzie and the crew for putting on NOCO. Thank you.
Yeah, cool shirt, Dave.
Think about January coming to Lansing, Michigan, most likely somewhere in Michigan.
Keep your fingers crossed, right?
We will be doing another expo.
We're
So
doing it.
we certainly will. We may be doing a little road trip too this fall down to North Carolina. So we'll see for the southern, the Southern Hemp Expo. We may make a little road trip down there for
Yeah,
that.
I think we need to arrive in force.
Yeah, we do. And again, folks, a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Michigan's going to be a big player as we move forward in the hemp world. So a lot of good things happening there. But with the upcoming year now with planting, and today it may not feel like it out there, but at least it's sunny. But believe it or not, planting season is coming. It's going to be here. The first thing usually comes up is always the asparagus. So today's recipe is a herb crusted asparagus spears. So pretty simple one. And of course, you know me, I like simple things pretty much. So you need about 12 spears or so, or a handful of spears. This makes about 4 servings, and this takes about 40 minutes to do. You need 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds. You need a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, a teaspoon of garlic powder, or 3 garlic cloves minced, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground pepper, a pinch of paprika, a 1/4 cup of whole breadcrumbs, and juice of half a lemon. And you preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and you wash the asparagus, and you remove the white bottoms, the ends. I always do that anyways, they're a little hard. And then you snap off the tops, and you transfer the hemp seed to a small bowl and a mix in a nutritional yeast, the garlic, the pepper, the paprika, and the breadcrumbs. Stir and set aside. Arrange asparagus spears side by side in a baking sheet. and sprinkle with the hemp mixture. Bake for about 20 to 25 minutes or until the asparagus are crispy. Serve with sprinkle with some lemon juice. So pretty simple one there. And this is from the Naked Food magazine is where this one's from. So we want to thank everybody. We want to thank James for the information he put up there. If anybody's interested in that, please get a hold of him right away so you can get onto that. Roger, we want to thank you very much for taking your time out today and sharing a lot of great information there. Again, I wish I would have seen this 2 years ago. So, all right. We want to thank everybody. We're a little long today, but thanks everybody for doing it. And we'll see y'all next week. Next week, we're going to have Eric Steenstra with Vote Hemp. Eric's been on the show a long time ago, but we're welcome to have him back. And we're going to talk about legislation, where that's going, and what he sees as we move forward with that. So thanks everybody, and see you next week.
Peace and love.